Africa owes a big part of its economic growth and development to the richness of its natural resources, its demographic dividend, and a rapidly emerging innovation culture. Innovation is fundamental in improving economic growth and the quality of life of all Africans. Countries that fail to innovate will be left behind economically. So how does Africa, or is Africa, performing when it comes to the innovative landscape? And are we making appropriate strides in driving innovation on the continent? Well, to help us answer all these important questions and to give us direction going forward, I have in Johannesburg with me JJ Van Dongen, who's the CEO of Philips Africa, McLean Sibanda, CEO of the Innovation Hub. Joining us in our Lagos bureau, we have Chika Nwobi, who's the founder and managing partner of L5Lab. And in Nairobi is Felix Ntinga, who's the Chief Business Development Officer at Cellulant. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today. Good to have you all, and hopefully a vibrant discussion that we'll have. But I want us to delve into the definition when it comes to innovation to ensure that we all are on the same page. And perhaps, JJ, let's start off with you. Clearly, it's a disruptor, and so often when we think of innovation and innovative context, so to speak, we often think and link it to technology. Do these two work hand in hand together?
Yeah, I think they do. We as a company have been innovators for more than 100 years. We still are innovators, and it is about use of technology. It's about having technology, but it's also about being entrepreneurial in terms of your approach. So you've got a balance between coming up with great ideas and how do you now bring them to market that's actually in an appropriate fashion.
McLean, I take it you agree?
Yeah, I agree, and I think, however, I think we need to broaden the definition. Technological innovation is a subset of innovation, and I think within the African context, and also given the lower technological base that we're starting from, we need to be talking, much more broader and say, innovation is perhaps doing things differently. It's finding ways of addressing problems that we face as a society and seeing how we can be competitive. And of course, technological innovation has historically given nations more advantage.
Felix, I'd like to come to you just to give us your view from the East African perspective and your particular definition when it comes to innovation, and more importantly, how we fare as a continent when it comes to tapping into this opportunity to help drive economic growth.
From where I said, I look at innovation as transforming ideas into goods and services that can actually add value to the people. Adding value in this sense in terms of changing lives, and adding value in terms of creating economic opportunities. But in the African setting, I would look at innovation as how we address challenges using our existing technology to actually transform the lives of our people. So in the East African context, we're seeing this being applied broadly, especially around the financial sector. With the advent of innovations like M-Pesa, M-Shwari, small loans and savings. In Nigeria, for example, in the agricultural sector, we're seeing innovation being used a lot in transforming the lives of small-scale farmers, as well as those at the bottom of the pyramid, earning less than $2 a day to be sort of part of the financial inclusion.
Let's cross to Nigeria now, where Chika will give us his perspective on the scale and level of innovation on the continent, and more importantly, again, tapping onto the theme that seems to be coming across is how we need to use innovation as a tool to help address the social economic ills that we have. Chika?
Speaking from a Nigeria perspective and a broader African, addressing the question of how much we're innovating and how much we're using, I think in Nigeria, we're seeing increasingly that people are looking at new ways to solve problems, and technology is playing a role as an enabler of that. I mean, things that we were not able to do before, we are now able to do in payments, in education. In our accelerator program, 440 last year, we had young guys that came up with ideas in from retail to education to security, and all these things, all these ideas were ideas that would not have been feasible 8 years ago. But because mobile is growing and data is available and payments is coming, so all these technology enablers have allowed people to think and discover new ways to do things. And then by applying the entrepreneurial spirit, they're coming up with solutions that I think we're going to see increasingly.
I want to tap into that entrepreneurial spirit that you alluded to, because JJ also shared the same sentiments. Is there a particular balance? Because some say entrepreneurs are born and not made. Are innovators born and not made? And is there perhaps a bridge that we can cross as well when it comes to encouraging and driving skills development when it's come to innovation? Chika, let's get your response first before coming to JJ in studio.
Think of innovation in terms of almost like a push and a pull effect. So the pull is challenges. If you're facing, like necessity the mother of invention, so you're facing a lot of challenges, then you're forced to think of new ways to solve problems. The push is that you see people who have done that in the past and have now created tremendous value and wealth, and you see that there's an increasing amount of investment. So in Nigeria, for example, there's an increasing amount of investment going towards technology, or towards innovation or innovative businesses, innovative business models. And so you find that that is driving the entrepreneurial spirit. People who might ordinarily have thought that they're not entrepreneurs, or who might have ordinarily, if the wheel isn't broken, then don't try to fix it. So people who might have tried to keep doing things the same way, when they see that either the same way doesn't work anymore, there's a challenge that they need to solve, then they are forced to think, or when they are incentivized by the opportunity to create a successful business, then you see people thinking. So I don't think necessarily that's something that innovators are born innately with the ability to innovate. I mean, I think obviously you have to have an amount of intellectual capability and a certain temperament and character of persistence and resilience. But I'm seeing people who I would ordinarily not have thought can come up with an innovative idea and make it work, and I'm being surprised all the time.
JJ, let's get your response, innovators.
It's interesting. Yeah, in some ways I do think people are actually born with it, because to be an innovator and take either create new products, or else take existing products and adapt them, or look at new business models and actually develop new business models. That's a particular type of inquisitive nature that a person has. On the other hand, entrepreneurship is basically how do you scale that to something that is actually available for people in the market. And I see them as different. You don't often necessarily get them together. You do get people that have those capabilities. But I think the latter, the entrepreneurship, can be taught a little bit, in terms of, and provide the systems, the structures for someone to actually take their innovation and scale it to a level that actually can be available for people in the market.
Perhaps, on that note, perhaps both you and McLean can give us further perspective as well, because there is a partnership between both Philips as well as the Innovation Hub here in South Africa. If I'm not mistaken, the Innovators Fellowship Competition, hashtag the next big idea. Are there particular trends and nuances, without giving too much away, with regard to the kind of individuals that you see coming forward with amazing ideas?
Yeah, well, I think, just going back to also looking at the definition, and also whether they're born or not, I think there's the environment plays a big role. So it's also an upbringing, it's a culture, and we find that the ones that have been brought up to perhaps think more on their own, take more risk, they tend to be much more entrepreneurial. And I think to be an innovator, you've got to be, there's a different way of thinking, and I think you're always trying to find a solution. You're trying to go around a particular problem. But I think the entrepreneur is one that says, that's how you make money. So it's really what JJ is talking about in terms of scaling up. And I think within Africa, my view is that our education system has tended to be very conservative. You're actually taught to go to school and get a job and so forth. Whereas in essence, what we should be teaching, the youngsters is, of course, get an education, but try to look around your society. What are the challenges that are there within the society? And how would you actually address them? And I mean, going back, to what Chika was talking about, the pull and the push. And I think if we are to then start to emphasize that, we'll find perhaps more people talking around the push which is really, the disruptive kind of ideas, coming through. And so, I mean, we've partnered as an agency of the government of Gauteng with Philips, a private sector company, to say, what are the innovations out there within the medical sector that can provide competitiveness to our healthcare system, not only in South Africa, but also right across the continent. And I mean, JJ can talk more around some of the ideas that came through this morning. Yeah.
Listen, it came from the whole partnership came from a survey that we did in terms of assessing innovation on the continent.
Yes.
And I'm sure you're going to discuss a bit of the statistics on it, but it's really about that the majority of people do believe that they are innovators, but they struggle to bring it to scale. And that's in the essence of what the survey says. But we see countries like South Africa and Nigeria are very innovative. We see Kenya has a right ecosystem that allows and stimulates innovation. But we see in the north of Africa less innovation than, say, in the sub-Saharan part of Africa.
With the exception of Egypt and Morocco,
Yes,
if I'm not mistaken.
But even so, that they are lower than what a Nigeria and a South Africa is in terms of innovation. And at least that's that spirit of driving, at least from the survey that was done of the 1,000-odd samples that were inside, that was done in urban and rural areas, there is a base drive of innovation on this continent. And then we started assessing how do they struggle and why can they not bring it to scale. And that's where we're trying with our fellowship together how to actually assess some great ideas in the medical field, and actually how do we, the next big ideas, and how do we bring those ideas to scale and use some of Philips' resources in terms of innovation and incubation to bring them to more to scale.
Exactly. And we'll hopefully find these solutions by the end of the conversation today. But let's cross to Nairobi, where Felix, we want to gauge your views as well with regard to the environment for cultivating innovators, especially when it comes to Nairobi, where I understand the confidence levels are high. There's a strong positivity and attitude of can-do and executable positions when it comes to innovation. But in your view, innovators, are they able to be created or are they born?
Well, I would say I'm lucky to come from a country where innovation is widely accepted, supported by the government. If you look at, like I mentioned before, the advent of M-Pesa in 2007, exponential growth, 20 million customers acting on the service, looking at what you'd call evolutionary innovation, following up on M-Pesa, and we have M-Shwari, 18 million customers transacting on M-Shwari, therefore driving financial inclusion in the country. Interesting innovations around the education sector. The power, we do have, of course, not a very wide coverage in terms of the power grid. But if you look at interesting innovations like M-Copper, which has 250,000 active users who are paying, US 40 cents a day just to access power. This therefore increasing the power grid in the country. And these are initiatives that are fully supported by government. We currently have a lot of initiatives being driven by the Central Bank of Kenya, for example, through the Kenya Bankers Association, where we're seeing the financial institutions coming together to interlink to power to peer-to-peer transactions and see how money can flow faster within the economy. And therefore, from where we sit in Kenya, we see an environment that is quite vibrant, quite accommodative of innovation. And in terms of cost as well, you find young people coming up with interesting ideas that they're able to put out there as products because it's quite affordable. Definitely there's a lot that needs to be done in terms of creating opportunities for innovators. But if you compare, for example, Kenya with other markets, so Cellulant is a Pan-African business. We operate across 11 markets in Africa, and we're able to gather experiences from across markets in Africa. And if I draw examples with other countries like, for example, Uganda, Mozambique, of which we are in business, and you see innovation there really is vibrant, but the young people are frustrated because in terms of regulation, it doesn't allow, there's not sufficient regulation supporting young people to put out their products out there, interesting things that you can actually see are transforming people's lives. So the comparative space across Africa is quite unbalanced. And the view that we take then as a business is to see how, as we go into these markets, how we can influence change in terms of policy and influence change in terms of how people approach innovation. But back to Kenya, I think there's still more to be done, but currently we're seeing a lot of support on people trying to innovate, especially around the financial services sector.
Felix, I'd like to stay with you for a moment before we get Chika's opinion as well. The reason why I bring up the issue of perhaps innovative skills being transferable is because, as you've alluded to, the continent of Africa has a demographic dividend. 75% of the people on the continent are below the age of 35, but a large majority of them are unemployable, given the fact that they lack basic skills when it comes to being able to find a job. And so often when we speak about global innovators, the likes of Steve Jobs, Mark Zuckerberg, and even Elon Musk, these are all individuals who started their companies in their early 20s. And I take it that stems true as well for a lot of the innovators that we see coming through from the continent, Chika as well, and even your colleague, Ken Njoroge. Can we tap into the youth and maybe use the youth to identify new areas of innovation? Felix, let's get your view, and we'll cross to Nigeria for Chika's to give us his perspective on this matter.
As Cellulant, as a business, what we do, I mean, if you look at the vision of Ken, our CEO, and of the business, it's from the beginning, it was a company created by Africans to change Africa. And if you look at sort of the average age of the people running the business, it's anywhere between 20 and 30, therefore investing in the youth, people who are vibrant, having good ideas. But again, then, we are also seeing a lot of interesting ideas coming up across the continent. If you look at what Chika is doing in Nigeria with L5Lab, quite interesting, picking up young innovators, startups, giving them seed capital, which for me, I look at it as, you know, the first level of affirmation for an innovator. If somebody can come in and believe in your idea and actually put a seed capital and take 3 months with you to actually take you through the first steps of being a young entrepreneur, it means a lot. And I think probably Chika would speak more about this, but from where we sit as a business, we encourage young people, and in terms of internships, especially in our software labs, in our engineering departments, we really encourage fourth-year students and finalists in the final years to come in and train with us, especially not really about the software development per se, but also around creating a culture of innovators, a culture of running honest businesses across Africa. And you see, creating a mindset of changing Africa through innovation. Chika?
Yeah, you know, so I think that there is certainly an opportunity to tap into the youth. We have, you know, a demographic dividend, certainly. The challenge is really around education and access to knowledge. You know, we find the examples, common global examples, the likes of Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, and these guys. You know, if you look at their history, you find that they were exposed at a very early age. So people think that, oh, Bill Gates dropped out, but he was exposed way before his peers to the computer when he was like 13 or very young, before anybody else had access. And so he was really exposed, and therefore he could think about the possibilities. He couldn't, you know, you can't innovate around if you don't know. You can't give what you don't have, right? So I think that for Nigeria and for Africa, the challenge that we're facing is a challenge of educating people at scale, rapidly, so that when they have, and the education, I don't mean necessarily the traditional 4 years university or whatever. I mean just giving people the knowledge, access to the knowledge of what is possible, so that they can now take that and challenge themselves to come up with innovations and solutions to their society, to the problems around them. What we're doing with 440 and what L5Lab is doing with the 440 program is, you know, it's just a small drop. I mean, it's our own way of, you know, playing our own part, and it's a business venture.
Chika, there's an important word that you mentioned, which is naturally exposure, when making reference to some of the global innovators that we've alluded to, and that comes back to the survey which was conducted by Philips. Being a multinational company that has a footprint on the African continent, it seems that 42% of innovators, JJ, mentioned that they want more corporate involvement, and clearly this is where organizations like Philips, together with other facilitators in the industry, can play a part by providing exposure.
I fully agree with that, and that's why I think where the more entrepreneurial part of the discussion comes in, is because we have experiences and we know how to scale. And that's where the learnings that we can team up with them in terms of actually helping them go beyond just the initial prototyping or the concept ideas. How to get a right business plan in place, how to actually build on that business plan, how to get funding access, how to actually scale the project. And yeah, that's what we find quite exciting. What we've done with our collaboration is about finding those innovators here locally in the healthcare space. And we've had 60 odd innovators who submitted their proposals in the area of healthcare, and it's really exciting to see what's coming through there.
I'm looking forward to that. It seems like healthcare and education, another sector which has proven to be quite popular, but we'll delve into that briefly when we return from the short ad break, where we continue our discussion, taking a look at all things innovation. Welcome back. We continue our discussion now on driving innovation in Africa. I'm joined by my guests in the Johannesburg studio, JJ Van Dongen, who's the CEO of Philips Africa, McLean Sibanda, CEO of the Innovation Hub, and Barlow Manilal, who's the CEO of the Technology and Innovation Agency. Still with us from Lagos is Chika Nwobi, who is the founder and managing partner of L5Lab, and from Nairobi is Felix Ntinga, who's the Chief Business Development Officer at Cellulant. Now, just before the ad break, we delved into the role of youth, the role of corporate structures as well, but more importantly, one common occurrence and theme that certainly came through was finding African solutions to solve Africa's problems. And Barlow, perhaps this is where you can come in to give us further perspective. So often we think innovation is something on my phone, it's a mobile app, and yes, it can come through in that way, but fundamentally we all know that the continent has energy problems, trying to boost our manufacturing sector, finding efficiencies as well in mining, and that's where your organization also comes in.
Yes, thanks. I think if you look at innovation, I mean, innovation essentially should be there to give us a better quality of life, first and foremost. It then needs to create an economic spin-off. It must obviously contribute to the growth of the economy. And finally, in the South African context, it's about positioning South Africa. So if you look at those three dimensions, needs-based innovation generally is what would succeed. I think in South Africa we are very, very complacent. We've become an import-oriented economy. We have most of our deficiencies and needs in South Africa, and we quite complacently import solutions. We have immense talent, so there's no shortage of talent. I think there's a shortage of support, infrastructure, know-how, and I know McLean commented earlier on, and I support him 100%. We are a very risk-averse society. R&D is about success and failure. And I think what we need to do is about our psyche. We need to look at how we can open up opportunities where we move away from this premise that success at any cost. It shouldn't be that way. Because if you look at most of the greatest innovators, and I think if you look at Philips, etc., most of the big innovations have come from years and years and years of failures. But failures is part of the developmental path. So I think it's very, very important, even in our youth. We have some seriously talented people, but we've struck fear in them to fail, and so we look for the comforts as opposed to pushing the boundaries and innovating. So in South Africa, I think certainly we need, from a healthcare point of view, and South Africa, you know, relative to SADC and even in Africa, there are endless opportunities. But we need to leverage the potential we have and not put such daunting conditions. I think if you look, and that is why we don't have a good venture capital type of support network in South Africa. Even, and McLean will even probably bear testament, even as government agencies, we are too rigorous in terms of how we fund these innovators as well. We need to allow for these failures, and we need to create that spirit where you can push boundaries. And as I always say, we need to figure out a way where we can fail efficiently and we can fail cheaply, and we fail so that we don't end up losing everything that we have as well. And we need to have that culture.
Exactly. Philip, JJ, as well as McLean, you both nodding your head in agreement, and I take it this goes back to some of the results found with regard to the South African environment, where 57% of respondents actually feel that there's a lack of funding when it comes to the innovative space within the country.
Yeah. Just before you go, I think that we must also make the distinction where there's a lack of funding, but I think where there's funding with exclusive parameters that kind of prevent people. So there's two dimensions to that as well.
Let's go further, JJ.
I think from our experience, and we last year created an incubator in Kenya, and one of the key fundamentals of that was you must actually test many ideas.
Correct.
So the fundamental behind it was take global portfolio, adapt it for local needs. So find the local essence, and then also look at new business models. So it wasn't about necessarily a huge new idea. It was about taking what is in the market, understanding what's going on in the market, and bringing it to scale. And a key part of it is try many ideas and fail fast.
Correct.
And scale those ones that you find that are the pure ones, bring them through rapidly to scaling, and invest in them, and that will give the benefit. And that's what we're seeing is actually happening. And it's even a learning for a company like us in Africa of how you do it.
Pace and scale, critical.
So I mean, one of the things that we're seeing is also the role of competitions. Similar to the challenge that we're running with Philips. We run a range of competitions. There's also the African Prize, Innovation Prize for Africa, that is run by the African Innovation Foundation, which is looking for African solutions to African problems. But even within that, I think what we also need to be careful about is that the competitions must not stimulate serial competition entrepreneurs, but we need to be able to provide the seed capital for the guys to test their ideas, and then eventually find their way into incubators similar to what Philips has, similar to the Maxam incubator that we run, similar to Josie Hub and the other incubators within the continent. I think within Kenya, and Felix might talk more around that, we've seen also the iHub as a particular facility that then provides an environment for young people to be able to thrive. And I think the last point, perhaps, from my side on this particular one, is to also look beyond just the funding. Funding is one aspect, but also there's the issue of access to market. So the access to market is critical, and I think that's where also the large corporates come into it, because the future of Africa is going to be built by SMEs. It's not going to be built by large corporates. Large corporates are going to assist and facilitate the big industries of the future. But in essence, what we need to be doing right across the continent is finding those entrepreneurs, supporting them to start to build startup companies that will then scale and become the next Philips.
Exactly. Exactly. I want us to come back to that in a moment, but Chika, this is obviously a perfect point for you to come in, because that's the fundamental basis of your organization, L5Lab, where you provide not only financial support but also additional support that McLean alluded to when it comes to sourcing these innovators and getting rid of the risk factor.
Yeah, certainly, because we see that a major obstacle, in addition to finance, which is a really, really big problem, very fundamental to these businesses, being able to even test their ideas. But then you can't really test without customer, and many times you don't have access to the market at scale. And you don't have access to the big companies, to the big corporates who have access. So if it's like for a mobile app, for example, then a smart guy who just graduated from school is not going to be able to get a mobile operator to test their app. There's no confidence and so on. And so the benefit of of businesses like, or firms like L5Lab and 440, the accelerator program, is that it serves the purpose of almost like filtering as far as corporates are concerned. They know that if L5 has invested in a company, then we have certainly vetted it, and also that we are also supporting them so that they're not going to, so that the risk is managed. And I think that this is really essential, and we have to figure out a way. We're seeing in the telcos in Nigeria, like 2 or 3 of them have some kind of formal program that identifies that there's a need to work with people who would ordinarily not have access, and they run competitions and things like that. But I think that this is something that really shouldn't be limited to just telcos. I mean, in every industry, there are things that, there are potential innovations that, given the opportunity and access, that our people can come up with solutions that would solve the problems that they are facing, and that would scale. So I think that this is something that, the energy, oil and gas, healthcare, and even government, even public sector, need to learn from core tech. I mean, we're seeing, like I said, the likes of MTN and Airtel, the likes of the Microsoft, Intel, and the big companies tend to have some type of program where developers and innovators can compete, or at least have the chance to be discovered and then get into their distribution channels. I think other industries need to do that, and that would really also open up a lot of value, a lot of innovations would be born if that happened.
Chika, we're seeing it in healthcare and lighting as well. Don't forget, Philips is part of this conversation, and naturally they have their footprint on the continent too. But Felix, I'd like to bring you into the conversation. As Chika alluded to, it seems as though partnerships are clearly the only way to gain some kind of significant access and foundation when it comes to improving the innovative landscape on the continent. Are we seeing that taking place, in particular between the private sector as well as government, states, and the little guys, being the SMMEs?
Definitely. Partnership is the way to go. If I could give a good example, for example, here in Kenya, we're seeing the big corporates, especially the telcos like Safaricom, coming up with initiatives that drive talent around innovation by setting up academies that are specific to sponsoring innovation. Like, for example, we have the iLab in Kenya with a master's course that is specifically designed to promote entrepreneurship, to promote innovation. And so we're seeing the corporates going out there and setting up an environment where we can encourage young innovators to learn more and basically nurture their small operations into ideas that can actually transform the country. As well, we are seeing even in the banking industry, banking coming together, with government to create foundations that are sponsoring the youth achieve their dreams through innovation hubs. We have set up like iHub in Kenya, which is totally quite supported by government. We have as well institutions that are coming out strongly to set up innovation labs that are supporting young entrepreneurs who have interesting ideas around technology, creating interesting apps around agriculture, focusing on the key African priorities around agriculture, health, and business creation. So around agriculture, we do have young startups that have been featured, creating interesting applications for promoting agriculture, distribution of food stuff and stuff like that. Around health, we've had promotion of applications like mHealth, which allow you to access medical information from different government hospitals. In terms of business creation, like I mentioned, I have incubations run as well by non-governmental organizations like IFC, International Finance Corporation, which is also sets up incubation hubs for young entrepreneurs with support of the government and World Bank as well. So these partnerships between government and the private sector quite key in developing this, and as well looking at the private sector offering the first opportunities for these young people to work in a sort of a corporate environment and feel get the experience and exposure of a real or working environment, as opposed to the theory that they're learning in class.
On that note, I want us to come back because it seems as though a lot of the examples that have been drawn through our conversation tend to focus on mobile. And according to one of the latest reports, it mentions that sub-Saharan Africa is now the third largest mobile market in the world, just behind Asia Pacific as well as Europe. And you draw some examples to the healthcare sector, and where Philips is involved again. I think of the Philips Physic ultrasound as well, which goes out into villages and where women are helped when it comes to the ultrasound that they need to perform during their pregnancy, as well as the mobile clinics that were recently launched within the South African sphere. Is that also coming through when you take a look at some of the applications? And McLean, let's pick up with you on the competition as well. Is mobile a common theme when it comes to innovation, especially on a continent like Africa where there's a lot of spatial inequality?
I think mobile, comes through, and I think one of the things is that we have one of the highest penetration rates, globally, of mobile, and much of it is also attributed to previously lack of infrastructure, fixed line, and nowadays almost every person within the continent has got 2 phones. And within Kenya, for sure, I think the government has also put out good policies that have liberalized, connectivity and access. And increasingly, as the speeds increase and the government start to also put in place more enabling, policies, we're starting to see mobile being a driver. But also the other thing is that to get youngsters to be able to innovate on mobile is actually much easier. We teach young people through our M-Lab, how to start to code. And some of them don't even, they've just finished matric. Right now, as we speak, we've got a group of youngsters who are learners. They're on school vacation this week. So they're spending that time in our Code Tribe Academy learning how to code. And so in terms of getting young people into the innovation ecosystem, mobile is actually much easier.
I want us to come back to the South African context for a while, but before we do, let's cross to Chika in Lagos, just to get your thoughts as well with regard to mobile picking up and being an important element of the continent, given the fact that we've got you for a limited time only, Chika.
Yeah, certainly. Mobile is, the first form of access to the internet for most people now in Nigeria. It is, for many people, for the majority of people, it is the only way to access the internet and to access data services. It is also for entrepreneurs, for many entrepreneurs, mobile and mobile money and mobile operator billing is also the only way to monetize whatever service or innovation that they are trying to introduce to the market. So for all those reasons, it makes a lot of sense, and I think that it's something that we're going to continue to see. Of course, the fact that the mobile phone form factor, that the devices are also, rapidly, coming up to par with desktop and other forms is also helps, because basically you can achieve, one of the businesses that we invested in is called Pass.ng, is an app that is used by people who are preparing for university entrance exams, because university entrance exams in Nigeria are now all computer-based. But many people had never taken a computer-based test. But the experience on the mobile phone is for that particular test and for that particular app is fundamental. Is almost the same, or they were able to recreate what happens on the computer pretty much on the phone, and that really drove the success of Pass.ng. Now, it would have been difficult for them to roll out a product and think that all the university students all the secondary school students are going to have access. We also have issues of power. So when you start using desktop computers or even laptop computers, then power becomes more of an issue. So I think increasingly, even though it is already dominating, but we will continue to see that a lot of the innovation, a lot of the focus, especially for consumer type businesses or consumer type innovation. Of course, for enterprise, then you're still seeing, sort of like things that are like web-based and computer-based And that will also continue. But the majority that we will see in the, just moving forward will continue to be mobile.
Exactly. Chika, thank you so much for your time today and for sharing your insights with us throughout this discussion. Unfortunately, we have to say goodbye to you. That was Chika Nwobi, who's the founder and managing partner of L5Lab. But time now to get our closing remarks from everyone on the panel. And before we go, I want us to get implementable solutions when it comes to driving innovation on the continent broadly. Given the fact that a lot of African economies are under pressure due to the over-reliance on commodity prices, it almost seems as though different sectors are holding on very closely to their purses and not spending as much as they should on research and development as well as innovation. Let's start off with you, Barlow, just to get your closing points as to what needs to be done, and then we'll briefly come to the rest of the panel.
Sometimes maybe it might seem ridiculous what I'm going to tell you, but my personal belief is that when the market has slumped and when business is struggling, that's when you need to unlock the fiscus to innovation, because you need to then prepare for the uptake. The market will always slump and swing up, and that's the big problem. We all get into this fear and we tighten our budgets when we have the capacity because the markets have shrunk. So generally, I mean, in South Africa as well, whilst the economy is struggling a bit, we need to really encourage as much innovation as we can and as much technology development as we can, because the market will swing and we need to be ready to catch that next wave as well. The big problem we have though in the country, and I'm not sure, I know we spoke about this NSI, the National System of Innovation, and generally it suggests that there is this, when you talk about a system of innovation, it suggests that there's this well-coordinated network out there, but it isn't the case. It is an organic reality. There's players and actors that are there. Somebody needs to orchestrate that, and it needs to come from policy, and it needs to have, we need to end up where McLean, myself, Philip, all can work in a systematic, coordinated way. Exactly. We don't do that in South Africa.
Barlow, we'll have to leave it there. Very quickly, Felix, your insights from the Kenyan market in 30 seconds.
I think as a finish, I just need to mention one thing. I think the regulatory environment could be more adaptive to innovation. And this is, I mean, from the experience across different markets in Africa. Regulation still hampers a lot of innovation, especially around the financial sector. And if I could give a quick example around a market like Uganda, 3.6 million bank accounts, 40 million population, 16 million mobile money subscribers. It tells you that mobile is at the center of driving innovation. However, formats of banking like agency banking still not licensed. So for me, I think as we end, I think regulation needs to be looked at closely by most of the African governments, and see how government can be at the center of promoting innovation and allowing people to push boundaries as one of the panelists mentioned.
Just to steal 30 seconds, literally. JJ, your closing remarks.
Yeah, I believe that there's more than enough opportunities in Africa. And I think it's about, as you mentioned, Barlow, joining together with government and with agencies to actually create the right framework in which to happen. We just see ourselves, there's just so many opportunities that we really want to chase. And then the big thing is how to scale these, because we don't want to just prototype sites. We want to have full scaling of that, and that will then create the infrastructure in the country. And that's exciting.
And that's why we have partnerships like the three of you all gathered here at the table today. Unfortunately, we have to leave it there, but I think we've hit the nail on the head, and that does bring us to the end of today's discussion. A big thank you once more to my guests talking about all things innovation and how we can cultivate it as an environment for economic growth here on the continent. JJ Van Dongen, who's the CEO of Philips Africa, McLean Sibanda, who's the CEO of the Innovation Hub, Barlow Manilal, who's the CEO of the Technology and Innovation Agency in South Africa, and joining us from Kenya was Chika Nwobi, who is, or rather from Lagos was Chika Nwobi, who was the partner at L5Lab, and in Nairobi was Felix Ntinga, Chief Business Development Officer of Cellulant. And thank you so much for watching. Be sure to join us next time, but from me, Gugule Tutele, and the team, it's goodbye for now.